So we have representatives here from Oregon, from Kentucky, from Virginia, from Tennessee, Washington, Colorado, and Nebraska. So we have quite a variety of presenters to give you an idea of really what's been going on in their part of the country. And without further ado, I think we'll just start. Courtney Moran with in Oregon is going to talk about what's going on there. And I think that should be live.
Hello. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Courtney Moran. I'm a cannabis attorney in Oregon with Earth Law LLC, and I'm also the lobbyist for the Oregon Industrial Hemp Farmers Association. Oregon legalized industrial hemp back in 2009 with Senate Bill 676, but it took until 2014 for our Department of Agriculture to actually begin to issue rules, and we didn't have any licenses issued until last February. And during the 2015 production season, we had 11 licensees, 9 of whom were able to plant, and 5 who actually had viable crops. And a lot of that had to do with seed importation issues. We didn't have any help from our Department of Agriculture, so farmers had to get seeds however they were able to do that. And another issue, there were some cross-pollination concerns with the marijuana industry in Oregon, which created a lot of delay and some holdup in our legislature last term. But this legislative session, we organized and we created the Oregon Industrial Hemp Farmers Association, which I'm very happy to see several of our members here in the audience today. And we lobbied and had House Bill 4060 actually just signed into law this past Tuesday. And House Bill 4060 updates the provisions in Oregon related to industrial hemp and brings the regulation of industrial hemp in line with traditional agricultural regulation in Oregon. So our farmers no longer have a minimum acreage requirement. They're able to cultivate as traditional farmers are, with using clones, cuttings, and transplants in addition to seeds, using greenhouses and hoop houses in addition to fields for their cultivation. We also, in that bill, created mandatory testing. So every industrial hemp crop obviously has to be tested for THC, but what we have done is created mandatory testing for any industrial hemp product intended for human consumption. We want every single product that has been grown in Oregon growing into the marketplace to be safe. And so we have put these standards in today. And already since the Department of Agriculture has opened up licensing for this season, we already have 33 licenses that have been issued. So triple what has that happened from last year. So we are very excited for this upcoming production season.
Courtney, thank you. A question: how many acres do you think are going to be grown this year, or planted this year, I should say?
More than 1,000, we're hoping.
Thank you. Okay. Samantha, you want to jump in just because you just got here? Samantha is on the board of the National Hemp Association and is one of the main lobbyists here in Colorado for what's been happening for legislation here.
Hi. So I know Dwayne went over a lot of what Colorado's program is going on. So how many are familiar with the history of Colorado's program? Not many. Okay, so we can start from the beginning. So in 2012, Amendment 64 was passed. In Amendment 64, there was a provision that said the legislature shall, by 2014, enact legislation that would allow for the cultivation, processing, and sale of industrial hemp in Colorado. And so knowing that there was going to be a lot of fervor over the marijuana legislation, a few very dedicated hemp activists who had been working on the issue for a while, as well as myself, got together and decided not to wait till 2014 and to get it done as quickly as we possibly could. And so we passed Senate Bill 248, which was the Industrial Hemp Cultivation Act, aka the Lloyd Casey Act in Colorado, who had Senator Lloyd Casey had a history in Colorado of always pushing for hemp legislation in the 90s. Unfortunately, he was never very successful. And at one point, he brought in, it's a very fun story, brought in a tiny bale of hemp, and the state patrol seized it because it was drugs on state grounds into the Capitol. So it was very funny. So what we'd created is just a simple registration program. But you know that with licensing would come enforcement. And in Colorado, we tend to be very, so almost libertarian, liberal, Republican. We're a state that's split 30-30-30. We have 30% Democrats, 30% Republicans, 30% independents. So we're as purple as you can get in this state. And with licensing comes enforcement. And we didn't want people to feel like they could have their right to grow hemp taken away from them at any time with a licensing fee. And plus, it's not necessarily our departments of agriculture to be an enforcement agency. They're more of a regulating agency. Enforcement implies that they can punish you and enact like fines and fees like that. And that's not really what the Department of Agriculture does. And since we wanted hemp to be treated like a regular crop, just like corn, right? You don't need a license to grow corn. We just wanted people to register so we could keep track of everything. And so we set up a registration program. We set up testing that happens 2 weeks before harvest. We and then that's it. There's no like processing license. There's no sales license because those are things that in Colorado you're going to abide by whatever the regulations are anyways. So we like to treat hemp as a food agricultural commodity crop. So if you're already processing for fiber, just as you would with corn or wheat, or if you're making food just as you would with apples, you follow health guidelines, you follow food safety guidelines, you follow the regulations that are required within that processing. All you're doing is just growing a different crop that you happen to register for. Clearly, seed was a little bit of an issue, and so we have set one of the first programs in the nation for the certified seed program, where we're making a Colorado heritage cannabis seed. And CSU is actively in development with that now with our Department of Agriculture. When we first started, we probably had 1,000 people registered to grow, which is like, whoa, blows your mind. But we probably only had roughly around 200 acres cultivated, nothing much. A lot of people just registered for the sake of registering. And now, this year, I think we're on track to I think Sean had estimated it yesterday, that probably 3,500 acres are going to be planted and harvested actually in Colorado. And that's amazing. It's great. We've got a really burgeoning industry here. Arvada has just opened up a hemp facility. It's wonderful. And so now what we're seeing in Colorado is, and this is one of the things that we as an organization, national organization, really want to help a lot of other states with, is what do we do next? What is the next step? After you've legalized hemp, people can cultivate it. Well, now what are the next steps? How do you continue to shepherd this crop and this industry into your state? And some of the challenges that we're facing in Colorado, for example, and I know it's something that Oregon faces, Washington faces, California is going to face, Nevada is going to face, is harmonizing the hemp crop industry with the marijuana crop industry. Because what we are seeing now is there are a lot of territorial issues going on. Pollination is the biggest one. In Colorado, at first, the marijuana industry was required to grow indoors. And we have local control. So with the marijuana industry, the cities can opt out. So Denver obviously opted in, but there's a lot of local cities that have opted out. We didn't want that with hemp. This is a matter of statewide concern in Colorado. So Ray, Colorado, or Loveland, Colorado can't say you can't grow hemp here. If you can grow wheat on your farm and you have an agricultural plot, you can grow hemp on your farm, just as long as you're abiding by zoning regulations. And so, sorry, I thought it was just an update. Sorry. But anyways, that's what we're going on in Colorado. I apologize. Thank you for being patient. I was just giving people an update. Anyway, so that's what we're fighting right now is those territory issues with the marijuana industry.
I am Josh Hendrix. I am one of 144 Kentucky hemp farmers, licensed hemp farmers. I'm also the Director of Business Development for CV Sciences. We have our Plus CBD oil booth out there, booth 67. But in terms of Kentucky, I guess, kind of bouncing off what she said, we don't have the issue with marijuana. There's no marijuana laws, medical or recreational, in Kentucky. So hemp is kind of our thing. That's what we really want to push. We used to be the hemp state. If you actually look, we're the bluegrass state, but we used to be the hemp state 100 years ago. So we kind of want to get back to that. We have a very good political climate in Kentucky. Obviously, our ag commissioner was big in pushing Senate Bill 50 through, and then Senator McConnell with the Farm Bill Rand Paul, Thomas Massey, all those guys. A lot of political support in Kentucky. So to give you an update on what we're doing now in our third year, there's 4,600 acres approved to be planted this year. I'd say it'll probably end up being closer to 4,000 because not everybody's going to maximize their acreage. But 144 farmers, 42 processors, and it's really, like everybody else said, this is really being looked at as an agricultural commodity. It's something that can be an economic boom in Kentucky. It's something that we really feel like we could create an industry, not just for Kentucky, but for that region of the country. Colorado's obviously doing a good job out here. So other than that, if you have any questions afterwards, just find me outside.
Joy Beckerman, I'm from Washington State. I've been involved in the hemp industries in both movements for 25 years. President of Hemp Ace International and the Industrial Hemp Advisor for the Northwest Farmers Union. We finally passed a bill in Washington State just this year. We did legalize marijuana before we legalized industrial hemp. A lot of folks had the misimpression that because we legalized marijuana recreationally and medicinally, that we had legalized hemp, and we have not. So we've not actually ever planted a legal hemp seed in Washington State yet, only over 2 million square feet of legal marijuana canopy. And just this year, after 3 years of competing hemp bills, and Zev did ask that we focused a little bit on some of the lessons throughout legislation, after 3 years of dueling hemp bills, which can be a big problem when you have a Republican bill and a Senate bill, and if one is the House and or a Republican and Democrat, and one is the House and one is the Senate, you know, the glory of a legislator is to have their bill become law. And so for 3 years, we weren't able to get them passed. This year, the WSDA and I decided to just be on the make a united front. And the biggest lesson that I can say, if you're in a state that hasn't legalized, and can I see by a show of hands how many people are from states that don't have a hemp program yet or haven't legalized? So a few of you. So teaming up with your State Department of Agriculture is the biggest, most valuable lesson that I can give to you, and to educate them, and to be their partner, and to always have a smiling face, and beyond that, to involve other State Departments of Agriculture in your meetings with them. The Kentucky Department of Agriculture has been integral and so helpful and very willing to help other states. They enjoy that very much. And so I got them involved in some of the meetings and PowerPoint presentations that I was doing with the WSDA, and believe me, it is very helpful. And then they join by conference call, just as if they were in the room, or Skype. Very valuable. So in any event, for us in Washington, it's interesting when you have a legal state, not just the cross-pollination issues, which are huge and will become larger and are probably going to be the largest part of our rulemaking process that takes up the most time before we can get our program ready and then put seeds in the ground, hopefully by 2017, is that our bill will not allow for plant material collection for cannabinoid extraction. So that's something different from Kentucky, different from Oregon, different from Colorado, and it does put us at a disadvantage. Now, perhaps it will also encourage a lot of the money that's coming in for the marijuana industry. Everyone wants to be the next marijuana billionaire in Washington, and I'm always encouraging them to, maybe they want to be the next trillionaire, instead and get involved in the infrastructure of hemp and decortication and processing and what we need. But what is unfortunate is that the one infrastructure that we do have, which is huge, is the extraction infrastructure. It already exists in Washington, as do cannabinoid testing facilities, and we're not going to be able to take advantage of that infrastructure because our bill does not allow for hemp farmers to collect plant material and use it for cannabinoid extraction. It's interesting, piggybacking on one thing that Samantha said, is that it's our State Department of Ag, and something I had to agree to when we decided to go in as the united front and get these dueling bills taken care of and one passed, is that the WSDAs are the champions and experts of food safety and quality assurance. So when they have been sitting in our governor's biweekly marijuana policy meetings and listening to our liquor and cannabis boards, what they consider to be abhorrent testing standards for marijuana and things that are going into people's mouths for human ingestion, they said, you know what, Joy, until the Liquor and Cannabis Board figures this out, the Department of Health and the WSDA doesn't want anything to do with these abysmal marijuana testing standards. And because of that, until the marijuana industry can catch up a little bit to food safety and quality assurance standards, we don't want our cannabinoids to go into people's mouths in Washington. So I'll be working on another piece of legislation for this year to change that. But overall, we're very thrilled that we're finally going to be starting underneath Section 7606, a research program that will be allowed to use commercial sales, hopefully by 2017. Thank you.
I'm Bill Acord from Nebraska. We passed a law, a research law, which are pretty much worthless, in my opinion. We need a commercial law. We passed a law that was signed by our governor in April of 2014. Our Department of Agriculture, who was put in charge of doing rules and regs, took 15 months to do rules and regs that were so restrictive the university couldn't even figure what to do. They didn't allow for pilot programs, which our law allowed for. They didn't allow for regular individuals to grow it under supervision of the university. The regulations state that it can only be touched by university hands and university equipment, university shovels. I mean, it's just incredible. And we could get into the reasons why. I won't waste your time, but there are a lot of the Department of Agriculture in the state of Nebraska they owe a lot of people a lot of whatever. Anyway, it starts with M. Synonymous with Department of Ag in Nebraska. The company name starts with M. So we're working on new legislation. We have a conservative, one of our Republican senators, Laura Epke, who's interested in a commercial law. And we told her the problems we had with the Department of Ag. She said, well, why don't we write a law and let's put the Department of Economic Development in charge? Whoa, we thought, we like her. We like that idea a lot. And my advice to people, if you're working on legislation, you're working on anything, people, you think you got to educate everybody about the difference between hemp and marijuana. They know the difference. Don't fall for that trap. Tell them about the jobs. Tell them about the economic development. They'll forget about the other. It's just an excuse. They'll forget about THC. Tell them about what hemp can do, how it will reinvigorate our rural economies. And, we lost 500 family farms last year in Nebraska, small family farms, under 200 acres. And I was raised on one, and that's where my heart is. So, but one more thing, too. We're working on our new legislation. We call it heirloom feral hemp in Nebraska. Nebraska has an incredible resource of heirloom hemp seed from as early 1800s. In the west Nebraska, 1850s in the east, they planted a lot of it. World War II, they planted it everywhere. And our NRDs asked the state not to destroy it because we're natural resource districts, because we're a pheasant and quail tourist hunting state, and it feeds those animals. And so they didn't. And so we've got incredible. In fact, most of the guys in Colorado know about it because they came over and took some. And that's fine. and some people I know very well, wink, wink, nod, nod, actually took some to them because we want to be helpful. And that's how it is in this business. So. But any questions you have afterwards, look me up and be glad to talk with you. Thank you. What? The bigger corporation farmers. Oh.
Let's try to go through all the rest, and then we'll do some questions at the end. If we have a little time, we'll do questions for sure. Thank you.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name's Jason Amatucci. I'm the founder and director of the Virginia Industrial Hemp Coalition. And I founded that about 2012, 4 years ago. It's a grassroots advocacy education group in Virginia. And we have been working really hard on kind of setting the stage for the legislation to happen. In 2015, we got a law passed. We got a law passed for research. And that was great. We worked with Vote Hemp on that and Delegate Joseph Yost. But actually, I want to go back all the way to 1619. The first assembly in North America passed a hemp law, and it was as follows. It said, for hemp also, both English and Indian, and for all English flax and aniseed, we do require and enjoin all households of the colony that have any of those seeds to make trial thereof for next season. So the first laws in North America, hemp was included in Virginia, and this is the Jamestown colony. So fast forward though, back to 2015, we got our research bill, which was kind of tough because Virginia is, you say conservative state, but it's a very tough state for cannabis. The legislature there is very, very strict on it, and they didn't want to budge. In 1999, we passed a resolution that just said we should look into studying hemp. But it took all that time to 2015 to get something else because of the momentum. I think in large part to Kentucky. I have to give a lot of thanks to Kentucky for pushing this forward. And Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul and the senators and everybody, it made Republicans say, okay, we can be for this issue. So, because we're kind of dominated by Republicans in Virginia at the General Assembly at this moment. So, fast forward to 2016, and we got a really great law passed that is commercial now. So it opens up the door for any kind of manufacturing, processing, anything to do with hemp will be protected legally by a licensing. And we have to go this route in Virginia. We can't go from A to Z just total free-for-all because Virginia is a very slow-to-move state with anything. And this licensing procedure is necessary. And so what we were able to do, though, was get a license for 4 years, which I think is great because that's the business plan, 4 to 5 years. So you can sit there and get that license and feel comfortable. We maxed it at $250 so that anybody could join in on this. We didn't want all the big companies to just, we want a small farmer to be able to test this out to see if it's right for them. We made sure that they were available all year with the Department of Agriculture available to apply for the license. I thought that was very important. And they have 90 days to process this. So they can't drag their feet. They have an implementation. They have to get the license processed in a 90-day period. Another big important thing is, and you find in legislation, is the word shall and may. It's huge, okay? So in our law, we made sure it says shall. So here's the thing with Virginia law, though, okay? Colorado, you guys, God bless you, you're doing it, and you're saying, we're doing marijuana, we're doing all this stuff, But in Virginia, we are the #1 recipient of federal funding in the country by far. $88 billion went to Virginia, okay, in 2011. Next state was California, which is a lot more people, $64 billion. Next state after that was Texas, which was $46 billion. So we are in lockstep with the federal government. Our General Assembly we're tied into the budgets, we're tied into everything. So we are not going to do anything. Our state agriculture department is not going to do anything that goes against federal law. So our bill is tied to federal law, but we are ready in Virginia. Any sort of daylight whatsoever. And I'm saying anything like a new farm bill. I mean, if we have to wait that long, whatever. But anything that we can do that opens up federal, it says that they shall make a license for any lawful purpose. And that lawful purpose would be as a federal law opens up for us for beyond research. So what are we doing in Virginia now? We have 3 universities that are going to grow this season. JMU, Virginia Tech, and Virginia State. Virginia Tech and Virginia State have decided to be in-house. They're not going to work with any farmers. But for JMU has decided to work with 2 farmers. They're Virginia Industrial Hemp Coalition members. And it's really cool. They're going to be the first private farmers to grow hemp 70-plus years in Virginia. And they're going to put the seeds in the ground very soon this season. They're working on a biodiesel project. The other universities are going to test different varieties in different ways, and I think VSU is going to work on greenhouse type things, maybe some CBDs, I'm not sure. But so that's kind of where we are there. And I just want to say that now that we've gotten the Virginia kind of taken care of, we're looking now towards the federal law because that's the next step. And so we need all the states that have already got we need to get our state laws in place, and then we need to really turn our attention to the federal law. And it's S-134, the Senate bill, and 525, HR 525. And we've got 3 Virginia co-sponsors out of 66 of 525, and both of our senators who should be on board are not yet. So that's what we got to do. Keep polite pressure, but definitely pressure on these guys. And if you got to tell them, hey, this is a big thing for me, I won't vote for you if you don't support this. This is my issue, and I really want to see your support on this. They do listen to that, and they get phone calls and all that. So that's big for our whole statewide movement to move forward as well. Thank you.
Hey, y'all. I'm Colleen Keahey from Tennessee. And I founded the Tennessee Hemp Industries Association ahead of the legislation that we passed in 2014. I did that so that I could plug into the Hemp Industries Association and understand who are the people already involved in the supply chain. Because when I'm addressing a conservative delegation in both chambers of government, they want to know about economics, they want to know about jobs. And so it was my role in trying to show them what was happening in Canada, what was happening in Colorado, thanks to the Commonwealth of Kentucky, that we had an opportunity now to be a part of building something in the Southeast. And so with that, we passed a hemp law, and we cultivated in 2015. And we had about 49 growers. We harvested 652 acres. Unfortunately, when we went to address potential processors who we were identifying in existing contract manufacturers in the state of Tennessee, we realized that when they went to the people who were involved in risk mitigation for their businesses, they said, you know what, guys, you are FDA registered, you're GCNP certified, and if you get involved in this without being covered under the license yourself, that this could be a problem. We don't want the DEA to come in and shut down your contract manufacturer when you service clients in other industries. So that was a real problem for us. So this year, we decided that we would create a new licensing program that was specific to processors. And this is not unusual in agriculture. So they already do hemp, or they don't do hemp, they do feed facility licenses. And it's $500 a year. Anybody who's going to take grain and make that for seed for feeding livestock, this already exists. So basically, our Department of Agriculture said, that's what we'll do for hemp. We'll create a hemp facility license. It'll be $500 a year. You know, you'll have to, make sure that you meet these protocol policies, and that will take care of it. So that bill right now is circulating through our government and has been passed unanimously now through 4 committees and is about to go to conference. So we're really excited that this is going to happen. In addition, on top of that law, we realized that one of the major problems for us budget-wise was the dependence on imported seed. And in order for us to have a certified cultivar in the state of Tennessee, they have to go through the breeding program that is overseen by our Crop Improvement Association. Every single state in the United States has a Crop Improvement Association. Whether they are the overseer of breeding to cultivate a specific variety in the state is unknown, but in the state of Tennessee, that is the case. So for us, we decided, all right, we're going to let uncertified varieties come into the academic institutions specifically to be handled by qualified breeders in agriculture, and let them try to create a certified variety, which would be a domestic cultivar of hemp, which then could be propagated to be sold to the domestic market. So that's what we're about right now in Tennessee in terms of trying to make things happen. I'm also the National Outreach Coordinator for Vote Hemp, and when I'm talking to other states about policy, it's really important for me to listen what's really important to their state government, including their Department of Agriculture. So many times people will go to their Department of Agriculture and say, we have this budget. This budget does not allow us to start a hemp program. Okay, well, how can we make the hemp program make the department money? Samantha Walsh made the point that that was more about regulation and oversight. Not the case for a lot of other states. They might need to make money. So if they need to, under the Farm Bill, create a licensing program, create a hemp licensing program, and figure out how they're going to make appropriations to have an operating revenue for the program, why not? That is not unusual to agriculture. And we found out by the bill that we just entered in regard to the hemp facility license that our state stands to make $300,000 in the next couple of years. And that's really big money for the state Department of Agriculture. So these little nuances in every state are really important to listen to and try to compromise with, and also look at other frameworks so that you can be sure that that program is going to work for that state. But it's also going to be open enough to let people who want to pursue opportunity go forth and do well. And for us, we did in our first bill just make hemp an agriculture commodity. So it's no longer defined as marijuana, which pretty much just opened the door. We just made rules through the Department of Agriculture. We did not put in the legislation. That's key. You don't want to have to go back and back and back and back and keep passing law to open the door for you, because your Department of Agriculture can change those rules and regs every year. every year. And if they're listening to you and you're telling them, hey, we need to do this, we need to do that, and the farmer's saying, well, we need more opportunity, they can make those changes for you. So that's been my experience in the industry so far, and thanks for having us all here today.
States are having to deal with it. So I'd like to take, now we have about 8 minutes, so I'd like to use this time for questions, especially questions that are kind of how they dealt with something or how they might deal with something unique, or especially if you're from another state that wasn't represented here, kind of what your issues are and what you'd like to see approached or addressed. Question? Yeah. So the question was, what's in your regulations around shipping?
States don't normally handle interstate commerce, that's nationally dealt with, right? Because it's interstate commerce, so they are going to handle what comes into the state. They're not necessarily going to handle what goes out of the state. What we had required in Colorado is that it's in a processed form, so there's nothing raw or that would be considered trafficking. So if you can import it, right, from like the way you can import raw stock or already processed hemp products from Canada, you should be able, in theory, under Colorado law, be able to export it.
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with the omnibus bill that was just passed, but there was language put into that basically says that no funds can be used to interfere with hemp pilot programs. So it's our belief in Kentucky, and the Kentucky Hemp Industry Council lobbying group that I'm a part of had a big, the reason that really happened. But if you grow hemp under a pilot program and process it under a pilot program, then just like she said, it's no different than shipping, the stuff that Nativa puts in their products from Canada. You can ship it anywhere you want after that. So.
And in Oregon, we do have the mandatory testing if it's intended for human consumption before it goes to the marketplace. So that will be for whether it's in the Oregon marketplace or the national or international marketplace.
That language that made its way into 763 of the Consolidated Appropriations Act, also the Omnibus Bill, because those words really are, as long as the hemp is cultivated, not that the DEA will see it this way, but the reality is that the language, the protection that Kentucky got into the Omnibus Bill specifically states that hemp grown in compliance with Section 7606 of the Ag Act of 2014, they cannot use funds to prohibit the transportation, the cultivation, transportation, processing, or sale within or outside of state lines. So that language is actually in the bill, within or outside of state lines. It's just phenomenal that you got that in there. I give KY credit.
Yeah, we have a problem in Nebraska with that. I think, can you hear me in the back? Okay. We have a problem with that. With DEA approval, the university lawyers, we think UNK, University of Nebraska Kearney, and UNL are going to plant this spring, but their university lawyers have advised them they have to get DEA approval. It's my opinion, I'm not a lawyer, it's my opinion that what you just talked about gives states permission to cultivate without DEA approval. Now, that's an opinion that they don't share because they're going to go the other way. Attorneys representing an institution or anybody is going to always go the other way. So that is a problem that, I wish somebody in the federal government would come out and really clarify about it, but they're not going to, because and it's hard to get those approvals.
I have a comment to that. When I'm advising states about this issue, especially states that just want to pass pilot programs that are exclusive to academic institutions, it almost never works. It's almost always a moot point, as it has been in Nebraska. And this is not because the state has to get or the university would have to get a DEA permit. It's the fact that the risk mitigation people for the university say, if you get involved with the DEA, you are jeopardizing potential federal funding for your college. So guess what? They're not going to do it. That's kind of one of the main things that we talk about, as Vote Hemp when we're trying to advise states to move forward. But back to transportation in Tennessee, we do have a 48-hour permit that has to be obtained from the Department of Agriculture. Now, this isn't something that's supposed to, alarm the person who's obtaining the permit. It's really more for their safety and protection, because what the Department of Agriculture does from that point is lets law enforcement know, hey, Whatever is going between route A and route B is industrial hemp. Stay away from it.
I'll just.
For Ms. Beckerman directly, I'm from Iowa, and we're having a very similar problem separating what's hemp and what's medical cannabis and where the cannabinoids come from. And if we're growing these outdoor fields of hemp, then we use the flowers for cannabinoids. And I'd just like to hear you talk a little bit more about how that conversation and that compromise went in Washington State.
You know, it was a difficult one, and they knew that I continued to educate on cannabinoids, even as I agreed and said I have no more amendment requests. We agree, but through every public hearing, I continued to educate on the incredible value of that crop. When the KYDA, Kentucky Department of Agriculture, involved itself in its meetings, they literally said behind closed doors, we're valuing that crop at $10,000 an acre, and I made sure that everybody knew that. I included in a PowerPoint the University of Kentucky Ag Extension hemp program polo shirts have embroidered on the side of the shirt, fiber, cannabinoids, grain. Beautiful embroidery, fiber, cannabinoids, grain. And I have the shirt blown up so that they could see it, and the beautiful Italo Holdings and Gen Canna fields. And so I certainly educated them. I give them slides of a fiber crop, a seed crop, a cannabinoid crop, and a marijuana crop. They do understand the difference. It gets down to testing. Courtney has done the most in terms of really getting the most effective education to her Department of Ag and her whole group and the ODA to educate them to that they're the same thing. And we've got that done in Washington in terms of non-euphoric cannabinoids, which can be extracted from both plants. But the fact that it comes down to the testing, which is why it's so phenomenal that Courtney and her group were able to get this really high quality testing. Having said that, I want you to know the good news is it's not fear, it's not paranoia. And our own assistant policy guy at the WSDA director says, Joy, what I'm going to struggle with as we go into rules and prepare for new legislation that will allow for cannabinoids from hemp, because he knows it's a valuable market, he said, we're allowing all this stuff in from foreign countries, non-euphoric cannabinoids, to come in. We have no testing requirements. We're allowing people to sell it legally in this country, and yet we're talking about putting all these onerous testing requirements on our own farmers when we're basically surrendering the competition to foreign cannabinoid extracts. So it's a very sophisticated understanding of what they have, and now he's actually struggling with, do we make Washington the high standard people? Oregon already just took that spot. Or do we tell our farmers that we don't want to hold them to any higher standards than we're holding foreign imports? And he personally is struggling with that and says, that's why I want a good rules committee. I need all of these voices so that we can come to that table. So the answer is, it's in process, brother. Great question.
Just so you know, we only have like 1 more minute left. Great, thank you. And I think one of the overarching lessons here is that this is an effort that you need to take through, step by step by step in your own state, and you need to have relationships with the individuals, with the organizations that are in charge of this, and you need to find out really who is in charge. And you may have to take a different path in different places. Some places may need a lot more education, some may not. So it really does depend on your own local, and it's getting involved in the politics locally that's really going to make this happen. So I know there's probably a lot more questions. I think these people will be available, but we're going to have to clear out this room and get ready for the next panel. Thank you very much for presenters and for the audience.